All right, everybody. Welcome to my first time homebuyer masterclass. Appreciate everybody joining me this evening for this live broadcast. So this is being streamed live, and I've got some people that are watching through the webinar. So no matter how you are here, no matter which way you're watching me, I have the ability to interact with you through chat, through comments. So if you have any questions about anything I'm going to talk about, feel free to post it into comments. And then I will be able to see those, pull them up on screen, answer those questions for you. So let's make this as interactive as possible, and let's go ahead and get going. All right, sorry about that. Got a frog in my throat. All right, so let's dive in. What are we going to talk about today? So there's three things I talk about every single month in my first time homebuyer masterclass. And this is not just for first time homebuyers. This is for anybody who's wanting to buy a home. Maybe you've been through the process. Maybe you want to refresh your course. No matter what it is, this is your opportunity to learn and to ask questions and to interact. So we've already got my first comment. And Debbie says, hi, John. Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for the comment. I appreciate that. So if you guys want to see your name in lights, feel free to post into comments. Linda posted just now. Hey, John. Hey, Linda. Good to see you. Thank you for listening in as well. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in and let's talk about what we're going to cover. So first of all, the three things we're going to cover every class, and this one is no different. The first thing I cover is a specific topic. The topic I'm going to talk about tonight is how to buy a home with bad credit. It's a major question people have. They're looking to purchase a home and they're dealing with credit issues. And you don't know what direction to turn. You don't know what your options are. You don't know if you even have the option to purchase a home. And so this is my opportunity to teach you, to educate you, and to answer your questions. Got another comment from Makeup Diva. Hey, Makeup Diva, thanks for joining me. So this is my opportunity to teach you really the ins and the outs of buying a home with bad credit. And so I want to talk, first of all, with what is your credit score and where are you getting it from? Because that's a big question that people don't understand, is they don't understand, what am I looking at in credit, and is my credit going to be acceptable? So how do I know what my credit score is? The biggest problem with credit is that the scoring models are different depending upon where you get your score and what that score is being used for. So a lot of people go to Credit Karma and they say, John, I got my Credit Karma score and my Credit Karma score is blank. And the reality is your Credit Karma score is not the score that's used for a mortgage. Your Credit Karma score is the score that is used for what's called an unfiltered credit score. As a matter of fact, companies have a choice. Credit card companies, car loan companies, they have a choice of which version of the credit score they want to use, depending upon the bank that's providing them the money. But mortgage companies don't have a choice. Mortgage companies have to use the mortgage credit score. Now, here's a little secret. The mortgage credit score formula was locked in back in 2006. It's in the process of being changed. It's in the process of actually going from requiring 3 credit scores. They're proposing only requiring 2. They were going to enact this in 2024. They're pushing it out further to do more research, probably 25 or 26 is when that's going to be launched. But the formula is going to be rewritten. You've heard things like, hey, certain things won't impact your credit score, like medical collections won't impact your credit score. Well, unfortunately, that is not the case for mortgage credit, because back in 2006, when the mortgage credit model was created, they said, well, yeah, medical collections absolutely are going to impact your credit score. And even though newer models have said, hey, we're going to ignore that, the fact of the matter is the mortgage credit model still takes it into account. Now, there was a rule that came out about a year, maybe 2 years ago, that said if you pay off a medical collection, it must be removed from your credit report. Well, that's true even for mortgages. So the bad news, medical collections count against you even when you're doing a mortgage credit report. The good news is once you pay off that medical collection, then you have the ability to get it off of your report and it no longer impacts you. So really, 2 ways you can get your correct credit score. The first way you can get your score is to pull your credit score through myfico.com. So myfico.com provides you with the ability to pay for your pay for a system that can show you your credit scores. And myfico.com has in there one of the options to say, show me my mortgage credit score. That is the accurate number. The other way to get it is from a lender like me. Now, some lenders will require you to do a hard credit report, but my company allows for what's called a soft credit report. The nice thing about a soft credit report is it doesn't cost you anything and it doesn't impact your credit score. So if you're in a position where you just aren't sure about what your credit score is and you don't want to pay for myfico.com, we can do a soft credit pull for you, and we can at least give you a glimpse into what your credit looks like. So don't fret over, my gosh, is how much higher is the mortgage credit compared to Credit Karma, or how much lower is the mortgage credit compared to Credit Karma? The truth is there's no exact formula. It's a different formula that some people have higher scores for mortgage compared to Credit Karma. Other people have lower scores for mortgage compared to Credit Karma. But the key to understand is Credit Karma is different than what you get on your credit card app. It's different than what you get anywhere else. And so it's important to track where you're getting your credit score from, because that will determine whether that is the score that your mortgage lender like me is going to use. Now, the movement of the credit typically moves in the same direction. So if you're tracking on Credit Karma and you're tracking on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you see your credit score moving up, it's likely that your mortgage credit score has moved up. But if you're seeing your credit score move down, then it's likely your mortgage credit score is moving down as well. So those apps are a good indicator of direction. They're just not a good indicator of the exact number. Okay, so let's talk about ways you can improve your credit score. I'll tell you, there's a lot of things you can do to improve your credit score. The first thing I'll tell you is pay off your collections that are less than 2 years old. That is the fastest way to fix a collection, is to pay off the ones that are less than 2 years old. Now, why am I saying less than 2 years old? Because if the collection was filed over 2 years ago, that looks like it wasn't really you, the you that you are today. Because the system is saying, well, when did that collection happen? Oh, it happened 5 years ago. Well, as long as there's been no other issues since then, you don't need to worry about your credit being dinged significantly. But those recent collections, those are the ones that are saying, hey, that's still you. That's who you are right now. So you need to pay off your most recent collections. Now, that doesn't delete the fact that they were in collection. But what you can do is something called pay for delete. I got to tell you, this is hard work. Most good things in life are hard work. But a pay for delete means you're calling the collection agency and you're saying, hey, I will pay off this credit or this collection account only if you delete it from my credit report. And they're going to say no, and they're going to say they're not allowed to, or they can't. And you hang up and you call somebody else and you do it over and over and over again. And at a certain point, they're going to give in and they're going to say, you know what, I'd rather have their money than to have my name on their credit report. And so they're going to give in and they're going to say, fine, pay me and we'll take it off your credit report. And you say, nope, still not good enough. I don't just want you to pay. I just don't just want you to take it off my credit report because I don't trust you. I want you to give me a letter in writing, emailed to me, that says when I pay this off, it will be deleted in full from my credit report. That is called a pay for delete. That is a great way to get rid of collections that is significantly better than simply paying them off, because it makes them disappear. Now, you can't pay to get rid of negative history on credit cards, a late payment on a credit card, the fact that the credit card or the car loan went to a charge-off status. You can't pay to catch that up and get rid of it. That's the payment history on a real debt. But you can pay to get rid of the collection. So pay for delete is a really, really good way to help improve your credit score. Another thing you want to do, open up some fresh credits. Because if you've got negative history on your credit cards, having a new credit card, even though you hear, oh my gosh, new credit is bad. Well, guess what? If 100% of your credit cards have negative payment history, then having 2 more cards, so that now out of your 4 total cards, 2 of them have negative history and 2 of them have positive history, that statistic beats the statistic of adding new credit being a negative. So you got to understand, credit advice is like medical advice. It all depends on your current circumstances. People will tell you, oh, do this to make your credit better. And that isn't always the case. So you got to be really, really careful. So Linda, I appreciate the feedback. She says this is really good to know. By the way, gang, anybody who's watching live, you can post any questions you have directly into the comments section of whatever portal or whatever platform you're watching on. If you are watching recorded, put that comment in there anyway, so that we have the ability to follow up with you later. And by the way, please like and share this. If you know anybody else that might appreciate this information, forward this to them as well. All right, so let's keep going on ways to improve your credit score. So we talked about paying off collections and pay for delete. We talked about the fact that you should open up a couple of credit cards, but more importantly on credit cards, keep your balances low compared to the credit limit. The ideal number is to keep your balance between 10 and 20% of the credit limit. Now there's two ways to do that: pay down the balance or increase the credit limit. Now, if you have bad credit, your creditor is not likely to increase the credit limit, so you probably got to pay down the balance. But if you have good credit and you want to make it better, call your credit card company and say, hey, will you increase my credit limit? Let's say you owe $1,000 on a $2,000 credit card. That is 50% utilization. That's going to hurt your credit score. But if you call the credit card company and say, hey, will you increase my credit limit to $10,000? Now you owe 10% of the credit limit and you didn't have to write a check for anything. So it is a really, really good way to be able to get your credit score up without writing a check, is to call your creditor and ask them to increase your credit limit. That will decrease your utilization without you paying a penny out of your pocket. Okay, so increasing your credit score, there's lots of things that we can do. The most important thing I'll tell you is don't try and do it without getting professional advice. And guess what? I'm your professional. So you want to make sure that you have me do a soft credit report so that I can review for you the steps you should take. I have a system called a credit simulator that will allow us to simulate what your credit score would be when we take certain actions. So it's really, really important that we use that credit simulator appropriately so that I can tell you, pay this down, pay this off, open an account, close an account. I can even put in a time factor to say, if I do all these things and we wait 3 months, what does that mean? If we wait 9 months or a year, what does that mean? And I can run all of those time frames and scenarios for you. All right, so we got a couple of comments here. All right, so I'll start with Debbie. So Debbie asks a great question, and she says, what about credit card debt consolidation programs? So Debbie, there are a few different types of programs, and I'll tell you, most of them I am not a fan of at all. Matter of fact, I don't know of any that I'm really a fan of. But I'll tell you, the ones that I'm most concerned about are the ones that are called debt elimination plans. So a lot of these companies operate under a couple of different categories. When they talk about debt consolidation, they could technically be giving you a brand new loan and say, hey, I'm loaning you money to pay off all these bills, and all you're doing now is paying me. That's not bad. That's not the worst thing in the world you can do. You're opening up a new debt, so that can hurt your credit a little bit, but you're getting all of your credit cards paid off and you're putting them into one loan. So that's a good thing, but that's rarely what's really happening. Most of these programs, the debt elimination programs, their focus is on eliminating your debt. They don't care about your credit score. So what they do is they tell you, hey, Debbie, stop paying your credit card companies and instead pay me. So instead of you paying $100 a month to 5 credit cards, I want you to just pay $500 a month to me. Now, in the fine print of their contract, they tell you this could hurt your credit score, but they don't really make it clear. And they say, don't pay your credit card companies. I'll handle the negotiations. And if they call you, just tell them you're working with me and hang up. Okay, I'll handle everything. Well, here's what they're really doing, Debbie. They're stopping paying your credit card companies. They're holding the $500 every single month. Your credit card companies get nothing, which means there's late payment upon late payment upon late payment added to your credit, which is dropping and dropping and dropping your credit score. And the idea is sooner or later that credit card company is going to say, I'm out, I'm not going to try. So Debbie says that's exactly what they said to me. So yeah, I'm speaking your language, Debbie. This is exactly what's happening. And so with these credit debt elimination companies, they are going to choke out these credit cards. Now, the credit card company is going to get to the point that they're going to tap out and they're going to say, I'm done. I don't think your Debbie's going to pay me anymore. And Debbie, obviously, I'm not talking about you in particular, but you're my example. I don't think Debbie's going to pay me anymore. And so I want to, I'm going to turn this over to collections. And at that point, they're willing to sell to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar. And that's when this debt elimination company jumps in and says, okay, well, if you're willing to sell it to them for pennies on the dollar, I'll pay you off for pennies on the dollar. And they successfully eliminate your debt. But they've destroyed your credit in the meantime. Debbie, I will tell you, a bankruptcy is better for your credit future than these debt elimination programs. It harms your credit further, a greater impact negatively to your credit score, because on a bankruptcy, the moment you file bankruptcy, nobody's allowed to put any negative remarks on your credit report for that credit card ever again. So you file bankruptcy, boom, you're no longer getting anything negative. And for some people, they file bankruptcy before they even have a late payment, because you know that you owe too much, you're barely able to make it all work, and you know you don't have an option. I'm not telling you bankruptcy is a good idea. What I'm telling you is you'll learn in a few minutes that after a bankruptcy, you can buy a home in as little as 12 to 24 months in some situations, because you preserved your credit. But if you use these debt elimination companies, it's going to destroy your credit and destroy your ability to purchase a home. So if your goal is to purchase a home and you want to get rid of debt, do not use these debt consolidation or debt elimination programs. All right, so Makeup Diva, she said she contested a collection on her credit report that she didn't owe. They haven't responded. It's been over 30 days since the letter was delivered. How do I find out if it was removed? So a couple of things. First of all, you can go to freeannualcreditreport.com. So all one word, freeannualcreditreport.com. And when you go there, you'll be able to pull one copy of your credit report per credit agency per year. So you really only need to pull one right now. You really only need to go to one credit agency and pull it down and see if that has been deleted. If it's still there, you know it's not gone. But here's the problem. Disputing something on your credit report really doesn't make it go away very often. It hides it for a period of time, because the thinking is when you're in dispute, well, that must not really be a negative on your behalf. And so they mask it and your credit score gets better, which is some of these credit improvement programs. Now, debt elimination is what we talked about with Debbie, and something totally different are these credit improvement programs. And they say, I can improve your credit score. I can get your credit significantly better. What they do is they just dispute everything. And the dispute process by design is designed to say, well, look, if you're disputing this, then you probably didn't have, this isn't your fault. And so we're not going to hurt your credit score. We're not going to include this negative account in how we calculate your credit score, because, well, you know what? You are probably not responsible for this. And so it masks it. And the problem is these companies take advantage of it. They say, hey, I can get you a 50-point increase in your credit score. And all they do is dispute everything. Then they show you the printout that says, see, your credit score went up 50 points. But as soon as the dispute is over, your credit score goes right back down. What you have to do is you contact the company. You have to call the company who, okay, so you did do it directly with the creditor. Perfect. So, which is exactly where I'm about to go. All right. So if you went directly to the creditor, then that's the right step. And now you absolutely need to follow up by pulling your credit report. Again, freeannualcreditreport.com does not give you your credit score, but it shows you everything on your credit report. Or if you need to, call me. I'll do a soft credit pull and I can tell you if it's on there or not. So that's the simplest way to do it. Hopefully that makes sense. And you gave me a way to explain a couple of different things. All right, so Linda brought up a good comment. And she said, some creditors will do a one-time correction for payment history, which is similar to a pay for delete. For example, if you paid 1 or 2 late payments, they will remove the late payments. I agree, Linda. I've seen that, but it's not very common. As a matter of fact, what I've learned over the years is that banks get pretty stubborn in saying, you know what? I don't want to let you off the hook when it comes to you having this late payment on your credit report, because I don't want my bank competitor down the street letting you off the hook. And now I have no idea that you didn't pay them on time. And now I'm going to loan you money that I otherwise would not have been willing to loan. So they're kind of doing it as a way to make sure that down the road, the information is accurate. And what I found is most banks, they used to do a courtesy. Hey, you've always paid on time. We're going to do it as a courtesy to remove this late payment from your credit report. I have had people call and ask for courtesy removals, and I haven't had anybody successfully win that fight in years. The fight you win is the fight where you prove it was their fault. I mailed it in, you guys didn't process it on time, or something happened that wasn't my responsibility. Okay, that's where you can sometimes win that fight. The good news is if everything else is good on your credit report, one late payment isn't a big deal. It's kind of like points on your driving record. You have 1 point on your driving record, it's not a big deal. You get multiple points on your driving record, it's a pretty big deal. And so it's something to be aware of, is it's cumulative. And if you have a late payment, it's not a big deal. What the credit system looks at is the credit system is trying to predict the future. And it's looking at patterns. And so if you're in a position where you've had a lot of late payments all at one time, you're going to rebound very, very quickly, because the credit system says, okay, you had a bunch of late payments, but they all happened at one time. You were perfect before that. You were perfect after that. And so we understand that sometimes life happens, sometimes bad things happen. And this allows you to be able to rebound, because that's not who you are over time. But here's the opposite. The opposite is somebody who has a late payment here, and then 3 months later, a different card that's late, and 6 months later, a collection account, and then 9 months after that, a late payment on their mortgage. All of those, now mortgage late's huge, a big deal, okay? But all of those things are, oh, it's no big deal. I was only, 32 days late. Guess what? And by the way, it doesn't matter, John, because the credit card company's happy. They got to collect a late fee from me. It's hardest to recover when you are what I call slow payment history. If you're slow in paying everything, that's a pattern. And that's a pattern that is very concerning to the credit system. Linda asked, Makeup Diva, did you contact the credit bureau? So that is another point. So I always want to contact the creditor directly, but you also want to contact the credit bureau to let them know it's in dispute. So the dispute process is important, but it isn't the only thing to do. And many people think they simply dispute it and they're in fine shape. Okay. All right. So let's keep moving along here. Feel free to continue asking questions. Hopefully this is valuable information. All right. So let's talk about specifics of credit. So first of all, credit runs from 350 to 850. Pretty much under 550, you're not going to get a mortgage. Okay. There's some programs out there maybe, but it's really few and far between. So if you have a 550 credit score, then you can get a mortgage as long as you have 10% down. This would be an FHA loan. Okay, so the option is out there for sure with 10% down. By the way, Linda, thanks for giving that advice, because Makeup Diva says will do. So here we are. I'm not the only one providing advice. You guys are networking and providing advice to each other as well. That's awesome. All right, so with the 550 credit score, before I go further, I want to explain, how do we come up with the credit score we use, since we have 3 different scores from 3 different credit agencies? Well, what we do is we take the highest and we throw it away. We take the lowest and we throw it away. And we use the middle of the 3 scores for each person on the loan. And then we take the worst of all the people on the loan. So if you are buying a home with multiple people, the worst scoring credit person is going to be the credit score we are going to use. So be aware of that, because sometimes you can kick that person off the loan. The problem is when you kick them off the loan, I cannot use their income. So if the person remaining has enough income, we're golden. If the person remaining does not have enough income, then you might need to get a cosigner. So that's a situation where you've got one party that acts as the occupant and they have good credit. And then the cosigner comes in. The cosigner has good credit. They're not going to live in the home per se, but they have good income to make up for the income of the person you took off of the loan. So there's some ways we can make things work there. But bottom line is, if you have a 550 credit score, you need 10% down. So what's the next tier? If you can get yourself up to 580, you can do as little as 3.5% down payment. Now, remember, you have closing costs on top of that. And later in this masterclass, I'll go over what you should be budgeting for closing costs. Okay. But at 580 credit score, you can put 3.5% down. The next tier is at a 620 score and better. You have the option to buy a house with 0 down payment. So you have a lot of flexibility if we can get you over that 620 number. Now, here's the deal though. Rates get better the higher your credit scores go up. So just because you have a 620 doesn't mean, oh my gosh, John, that's great. I've achieved the promised land. I can do 0 down. Well, you're going to have a much, much higher interest rate and fee and monthly payment with that credit score than you will with a 720. And it'll be even better if you can get it to an 820. So interest rates get better when your credit score goes up. That's critical to understand. Now, I talked a minute ago about a cosigner helping you out. Here's the deal though. A cosigner cannot offset your low credit score. We're going to take the worst credit of everybody on the loan with one huge exception. One huge exception. I have a program that is a conventional loan that by the way, there's 2 components here. One has to do with do you qualify? The other one has to do with what's your interest rate. So this program says, look, if you have 2 people buying a home together and one of them has a credit score that is well below the conventional requirement of 620. So let's say your credit score is 550. And you're saying, gosh, I don't know how I'm going to buy a house because I can't come up with 10% down, and I can't do an FHA loan for whatever reason. And so you find a cosigner who has an 850 credit score. So you're at 550, they're at 850. We blend those 2 together to come up with the average credit score, which in your case would be 700. That's the score we use for qualification. So you qualify for the mortgage because the mortgage credit score is 700. Even though one of you is at 550 and the other one's at 800, we are qualifying you using, actually I should say 850 because 700 would be the average of 550 and 850. So the bottom line is we average the 2 together. Now guess what though? You're still paying the interest rate that comes from someone who has a below 620 credit score. So if you are putting a huge down payment, like 40% down or more, you kind of get a pretty sweet deal because the system is designed to say, gosh, even with bad credit, the fact that you have a really big down payment, that overrules the bad credit and you're pretty much getting the best deals that are out there. It's when you're putting a really small down payment that it's very punishing to have that lower credit score. So just be aware, a cosigner can help you, but it's a little bit more challenging. All right, so I want to talk now about waiting periods because we've talked about the specifics of a credit score, but I want to talk about the specifics of a waiting period or how long after a particular credit event before you can qualify for a mortgage. So let's jump in here and here we go. All right, so here is a chart that shows us what happens when you have a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And so if you've got a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, let's see if I can make this a little bit, can I do this a little bit bigger? Yeah, I think that'll work okay for right now. All right, so what happens if you have a Chapter 7 bankruptcy? So with a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you can do a loan in as little as 2 years after the discharge, but it has to be an FHA loan. Now, there's nothing wrong with FHA. It's just you have to have at least 2 years after a Chapter 7. FHA, VA, conventional, and USDA say, look, none of us are going to play with you if you don't have at least 2 years after your discharge. VA also, same thing, 2 years after the discharge. USDA will do it 3 years after the discharge, and conventional requires 4. Now, conventional technically means Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And again, there's a whole nother group of loan programs here called non-qualified mortgages. So what's a non-qualified mortgage? A non-qualified mortgage is government money that we didn't get from the federal government. Now that money comes with higher interest rates, it comes with higher fees, but it comes with a lot more flexibility. If you know anything about something called a hard money loan, this is not a hard money loan. It's much, much cheaper than a hard money loan. And it gives you flexibility for things like bankruptcy, things like foreclosure. I've got some programs that you can buy a house the day after you have a foreclosure or a bankruptcy, but you have to have a big down payment, sometimes 20, 30, 40% down. You've got to have a lot of money in reserves being extra money after you pay for your down payment and your closing costs. So be aware there is flexibility, but that flexibility has a cost and it comes with more requirements. So from forgiving the fact that you don't meet these guidelines, there are other ways to make it work, but it's going to be more expensive. All right, so how about a Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Let's make this go forward. All right, so a Chapter 13 works different because a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you have a period of time from when you file to when you make payments to pay everybody back, and then it's discharged at the end, okay? Versus a Chapter 7 where you file and a few months later it's discharged, you never pay anybody back. With a Chapter 13, you are making payments during the entire time, and then it's discharged at the end. And for most loan programs, after you've finished making your payments, at the time that it's discharged, that's when your waiting period starts. So most people with a Chapter 13 say, my gosh, John, I had a 3-year payment plan, and then I had to wait 2 more years to do a conventional loan. It took me 5 years from when I filed for my bankruptcy before I could qualify for a mortgage. Well, that is not true when it comes to FHA loans. FHA says, look, we are okay with 1 year of payment history on a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So if you filed a Chapter 13 and you're on a 3-year plan, and or 2-year plan or 10-year plan, I don't know, and you've made 1 year of payments on time, and the trustee gives you permission to buy a home, and your credit score is good enough and you can come up with a 3.5% down payment, you can qualify for an FHA loan even while you're still making payments on your Chapter 13 bankruptcy. All right, so we got another question. So what did you say? What's the difference between the color rower and the cosigner? I'm guessing that's a typo, Linda, and I'm not really sure what you mean by color rower. So if you wouldn't mind redoing the comment, and I would happily address the question. Oh, co-borrower. I bet you're saying co-borrower and cosigner. I'm going to pretend that's what you're saying, and you're going to comment here in a second and tell me if I'm right or wrong. So a co-borrower and a cosigner are 2 words that are used interchangeably. And I'm not going to try and say which is which, because I get arguments from even people in my company and in my industry who say, no, John, it means the opposite. Okay. One of them means the person who is helping you qualify for the mortgage is both obligated to make the payment, they're on the note, and they are on the ownership of the property. Okay. The opposite version is the person is obligated on the note, but they're not an owner of the property. And so there's pros and cons to both, but the simplest answer is that if you are on the note because you co-signed, then you have a responsibility to pay that payment. If the person that's on that you co-signed with doesn't write the check to pay it, you better pay it or it's going to impact your credit. No matter if you're a co-borrower or a co-signer, it doesn't matter. The only difference is that you get no benefit in owning it when it comes to the house being sold and getting equity. Also, the person, if you're not on title, if you're not an owner, the person you co-signed for can go out and get a new loan. They can sell the house. They can do anything they want without your knowledge or permission. Now, for a lot of people, they're like, John, I don't want to know. I don't care. It's my kid's house. It's my sister's house. Other people say, no. My name's on there. I want to make sure they don't take out another loan and get a second mortgage because that's going to hurt their ability to pay the mortgage that I'm co-signed on. So really, 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 really important to understand the difference. So hopefully, Linda, that explains it. And I'm pretty sure that's what you were referring to. All right, so let's get back into the Chapter 13 bankruptcies. So if you are before the bankruptcy has been discharged, you can actually move forward with an FHA loan if you're 12 months after you've started making payments. You've made on-time payments for the last 12 months. You are given permission by the trustee and you have made all of the other qualifications. Otherwise, you're looking, VA is the only other one that will do a loan immediately after the discharge date. Otherwise, you're looking at between 1 to 2 years after discharge of a Chapter 13. And you do have to worry about what's called dismissal. Matter of fact, I talked to a client just today who filed a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and then immediately dismissed it. Like it was filed a month ago and they dismissed it a day ago. And they said, gosh, Sean, I didn't mean to file it. It's not going to accomplish what I want to accomplish. Guess what? Unfortunately, the fact that she filed for the bankruptcy is the harm because it shows that, hey, I can't pay. I'm unable to pay. I filed for it. Whether you chose to not chose to. Well, yeah, you chose to not fully follow through on the bankruptcy or not. The fact that you filed creates the waiting period. So she actually has to wait 2 years on an FHA loan, 4 years on a conventional loan because she had a discharged bankruptcy. All right, so let's talk about foreclosure. So on a foreclosure, let's pull up the foreclosure slide. On a foreclosure, you've got different rules here. So for the normal loan, how should I say it? To simplify it, on an FHA and a VA loan, you are looking at 2 years or 3 years after the foreclosure date. And here's the problem. The problem is the date of the foreclosure is not the date the bank told you to move out. The date of the foreclosure is not the date that you ended up moving out. The date of the foreclosure is the date the bank took ownership of the property. Now, we haven't had a wave of foreclosures in a long time, and I don't expect one coming up, but we're going to see more of them. People have credit card debt is at the highest rate it's been in ever, like $1 trillion in credit card debt, I think we have right now. It's double from 2017. People owe a lot of money on credit cards. People are stretching their incomes to pay for gas and food and electricity. And unfortunately, some people are going to lose their home. And so what I'll tell you is when you lose your home, you lose the equity that's in it. So do not sit back and say, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. It's like you're stuck. Your car is stuck on the train tracks as the train is a mile away and you see it coming. And you sit in the car paralyzed saying, I don't know what to do. Get out of the car. Sacrifice the car and save your life. Okay. The same thing with if you're losing your home, sell it. Sell it before it gets foreclosed upon, because unless you just bought it recently, you have equity in there. So call a realtor and sell the property. But if you can't, if something bad happens and you cannot sell the home, the truth is the bank may put it up for auction and then delay it. And there might be other delays, but the foreclosure didn't happen until the property is taken out of your name. So you have there's back in 2007, 2008, there's people whose homes did not get taken out of their name for 3 or 4 years. And the property was sitting vacant. It's the shadow inventory because banks didn't want to take ownership of the property yet. Because the bank said, we already have too many foreclosures that we own, so we're not going to execute the foreclosure on this. Because if we do, then we're now responsible for the care and maintenance of the property. We're responsible for any penalties the city is charging for the lawn not being done. And so, well, it's just simpler for us to not take ownership of the property. I don't see us getting anywhere near the challenges we ran in 2007 or 8, but just be aware, a foreclosure is based on the date the bank took ownership. Except if your home is foreclosed upon after you filed for bankruptcy. So conventional loans and USDA loans have a little cool rule in there that they say, hey, if you file for bankruptcy and you include the home in the bankruptcy, then the foreclosure is really fruit of the bankruptcy tree. And so we don't care about the waiting period for the foreclosure as long as you meet the waiting period on the bankruptcy. And that is a much shorter waiting period. So it is a pretty cool rule when we're looking at foreclosures that if you absolutely don't have a choice and the house is going to get foreclosed upon, you can shorten your waiting periods by filing for bankruptcy first. Again, talk to an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not giving counseling on credit here in that regard. But from a qualification for a mortgage, you are better off having put that property into a bankruptcy and then having the foreclosure. So I hope that makes sense. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is what's called a deed in lieu. So that basically means you didn't get foreclosed upon. You handed over the house to the bank. You signed it back over to them. And there's a little bit shorter timelines on a deed in lieu or a short sale. The timelines are shorter. Okay. There's also something called a short payoff. Again, that's a unique situation, but the bottom line is if you short the bank through a refinance and they didn't get all of their money, then basically is treated the same way as a short sale or a deed in lieu because you didn't pay back the bank the full amount that they were due. All right. So continue to move along because we've got a couple more sections I need to cover. Timing matters. Okay. So timing is critical for the type of loan that you're doing. And this This right here has to do with you having an expert lender on your side, and that's me. I am your expert lender that's on your side. Why do I say that matters? Because here's the deal. If you have a bankruptcy and you're right at the anniversary date of the bankruptcy, it matters what type of loan we're doing as to, can I start the loan before the bankruptcy anniversary date and just finish it after? Or can I not start the loan? So very, very simply, a conventional loan says, hey, the event date to the date we fund the loan. So if you have a bankruptcy that is 4 years old at the end of November, you could start writing offers October 15th. You could get into contract with a 45-day escrow that you close escrow on December 1st, even though the anniversary of your bankruptcy is not until November 30th. With a conventional loan, you have the ability to do the entire loan process. We just can't finish it until the end. An FHA loan is different. With an FHA loan, FHA says, no, no, no. It is from the date of the event to the date we pull the case number, which happens at the beginning of the loan process. We can't order an appraisal until we have a case number. So FHA locks in a case number assignment date. So we can't start the loan until or actually you can go into contract and I can start the loan, but I can't order the appraisal until after the anniversary date. VA is the same as conventional. It measures it to the funding date. Now USDA says it's the application date, which is even earlier than FHA's case number date, because it's the moment you get into contract and we solidify your application. That's when, and really they look at that with the credit report pulled date. So it's critical that you're working with an expert that understands all of this. All right. I'm going to shift to my second phase. That is everything I want to talk about when it comes to buying a home with bad credit. So quickly, I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to talk about the market right now. What are we dealing with in the market right now? What am I seeing? And what's my advice for people looking to buy a home in today's market? Once I do that, then I'm going to cover the entire process from start to finish. It's another probably 30 minutes worth of information on how to buy a home, like the literal steps, the things that banks look for, and how the process works from start to finish. So what's happening in the market right now? It is right now September 21st of 2023. The Fed just met, and the Fed met 2 days ago yesterday, and they made it clear we're going to keep interest rates high. We're going to keep them high a lot longer than people want us to, because they're worried about inflation coming back. And I'm not sure that things are going to be as bad as the Fed's painting the picture to be, but the Fed's made it clear, gang, do not count on us lowering rates anytime soon. And so what does that mean? Well, it means you've got to think about your timing in buying a home. So many people have said, marry the house, date the rate. I've used that a little bit. I think the concept is great, but the truth is, if you have a bad relationship with the rate, you might be stuck in that relationship for a longer period of time than you had thought. A year ago, we all thought interest rates were going to be dropping to the mid 5s to high 4s by summer of 2023. Guess what? Today is the first day of fall. We've officially outlasted summer. Summer of 2023 is gone. And today, we have the highest interest rate we've had in 28 years. Literally today. The Fed did not raise interest rates yesterday, and yet the interest rates went up today. Why? Because the Fed's talking about the fact that they're going to keep rates higher longer, and everybody counted on them starting to drop rates sooner. So what does that mean? It depends. It depends on whether you can afford the monthly payment at today's rates. Because if you can't afford the monthly payment at today's rates, you can't buy, and I understand that. And if you can't buy at today's rates, you say, well, John, I'm just going to wait until interest rates go down, because then I can have a lower monthly payment and I can qualify for that house and I can afford that monthly payment. Here's the problem. The housing market has not gone down in price very much, even though interest rates shot up. The housing market is supposed to go down in price when interest rates go up. The Fed is worried because they feel like inflation isn't going away because house prices have not dropped enough in price. But what's really going on is there aren't enough homes in America for the number of people that want them. And so house interest rates went up, mortgage rates went up. House prices didn't go down because there's still people buying. This week alone, I had 5 buyers writing offers on homes. all 5 of them lost out on their offer. All 5 of them were beat by somebody else. 5 families in the last 7 days that were writing offers that are clients of mine, and 100% of them got their offer beat out by somebody else. So don't let the media tell you that, oh man, it's really slow right now in the real estate industry. It's slow because there's very few sellers selling, but there's even fewer buyers buying. It's like you calculate how many hot dogs are sold at Levi Stadium tonight for the 49er game. And they could come back with a statistic tomorrow morning saying, oh my gosh, only 10% of the normal number of hot dogs were sold tonight. So therefore people must not want hot dogs anymore. But what they didn't tell you is that 90% of the hot dog stands were closed. And there was only one stand open. And that stand had a line a mile long, and people gave up and didn't want to wait because they figured I'll go eat chicken wings instead of wait in a mile-long line for hot dogs. Does that mean nobody wants hot dogs? Nope, doesn't mean that. It means there's only one hot dog stand and there should have been 10. And that one hot dog stand can only serve so many people at a time. So yeah, they sold a lot fewer hot dogs compared to what they normally do. But it wasn't because of a lack of demand for hot dogs. It was because there weren't enough hot dogs trying to be sold, able to be sold. That's what's happening in the real estate world right now. So you back to my story, you're going to say, John, I can't afford the payment right now. I'm going to wait. I get it. The problem is when interest rates come down, everybody else who's waiting, they're coming back too. You're not the only one waiting. Your neighbor, your coworker, your best friend is waiting just like you are. And they're going to buy a home when interest rates come down, or they're going to try. And that's going to cause house prices to go up. So now you have to come up with a bigger down payment. Yes, your interest rate's down, but your loan amount's up and your monthly payment stayed the same. The only way to get out of this vicious cycle, Linda asked me what's the interest rate. I'll tell you in a second, Linda. The only way to get out of this vicious cycle is by buying a home with a payment more than you're comfortable with, but within what you can afford, and then lowering that payment once interest rates come down. But I don't know when interest rates are coming down. And that's the biggest worry I have. When are interest rates coming down? Because if that payment is more than you are comfortable with, how long are you willing to avoid going to Starbucks to have your coffee in the morning? How long are you willing to sacrifice the kids not being able to go to gymnastics so that you can afford to have a house for them to live in? Only so long. And then you break. It's like people who buy homes that are an hour and a half driving distance away from work. Well, that sounds great until you have to drive 3 hours a day round trip. And sooner or later you break and you say, I can't do it anymore. So the question is, are rates going to stay higher longer than you can be willing to make that payment? I don't know. But if you can outlast the rate market, if you can outlast the Fed, you're going to be the winner on the other side, because house prices have not gone down. And that tells me that there's so much demand for people wanting to buy homes. My clients in the last 7 days, 5 of them that didn't get their offer accepted, tells me that you're going to be seeing higher prices once interest rates come down. And that's what I'm most worried about. So when I think about today's market, I think about it as an opportunity for those that can afford to take the risk. That's the biggest thing I can tell you that I see in today's market. So Linda asked, what's the interest rate? It's 1,000,000%. No, I'm kidding. The average interest rate right now is pushing 7.5 to 7.6%. Now, there are programs that are lower than that. There's programs that are higher than that, but they track the weekly average. You got to be really, really careful, because today, Thursday, every single week, the Freddie Mac publishes what the interest rate is. And you're going to say, no, John, I looked at the rate this morning and it's different. That rate was from 3 days ago. Because every Monday they send a survey out to lenders saying, what's the rate? And the lenders have to turn it back in by, actually I sent it on Friday. Lenders have until Tuesday to turn it in, and then they publish the results on Thursday morning. So the rate you're seeing today in the newspaper was the rate from either Friday, Monday, or Tuesday of this week. The rates we're seeing, the real rate today, you won't hear about until next week on Thursday. And it's going to be different because they're actually going to be quoting tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday's rates. And I don't know if it's going higher or lower. And so Kathy says, rents are going up quite a bit, aren't they? I got to tell you, Kathy, I'm seeing mixed emotions, mixed reactions, mixed data on that. But I'm not talking about emotions. I'm talking about statistical data and anecdotal evidence. So I will tell you that I'm hearing from landlords right now that their properties are sitting on the market longer. I think that the rapid rise in rents is starting to recede. I don't think rents are coming down, but I think that rent inflation has taken off significantly and it's starting to pull back. The reality is that people aren't, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that talked about, actually Wall Street Journal, yeah, that talked about commercial apartment complexes giving away free months of rent to get people to come rent their property. Now, it's kind of interesting because I think there's a lot of upward pressure on rents, and we're not seeing rents go down, but we're seeing vacancies for longer periods of time. And so I'm not sure what that means yet. I just read it the other day and I'm just digesting it, and I'm looking for more data and more information about it. But I'll tell you that rents are in a precarious spot right now. And so I'd be interested to see what's going to happen. I don't see rents crashing. I don't see rents coming down significantly, but I do think that landlords' ability to arbitrarily raise their rents significantly, it's coming down some. Okay, so wait and see. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, subscribe. I'll update you as often as I have new information and share with you what I'm thinking about all this. All right, so that's my take on the market. So let's shift gears and talk for the next 20 or 30 minutes about what do banks look for when helping you to qualify for a mortgage. And so, Kathy's asking me another question. I'll jump into Kathy's question. All right, so Kathy says, what am I seeing with house prices? I'm seeing them. It's funny. I had a buyer today, as a matter of fact, not one of the 5 that didn't get their offer accepted. I had a buyer today who the house was listed at a certain price. They offered $50,000 below that. And this was a $700,000-$800,000 home, and they offered $50,000 below. The seller said no, and the seller countered, and the buyer came back and they countered lower, and the seller said yes, and the buyer was about to sign the contract. And so the price was lower than what the seller had originally wanted. And this house had been on the market for 6 or 8 weeks. And guess what? The buyer told me tonight, you know what, John? We're not going to buy. We're going to wait because we have to sell a house anyway. And we're worried about how high these interest rates are. I mean, literally today, we're the highest in 28 years. And I'm going to have a really high payment. And I'm not comfortable with that. I think I'm going to sell my other house first and then buy something. So I'm seeing a lot of real evidence right now of a shift of kind of the winter is coming shift in the housing market. And I'm seeing, again, a lot of buyers trying to buy very few homes. And those are those 5 buyers in the last 7 days that all lost out. The one buyer that I had in the last 7 days that was going to get their offer accepted, the buyer backed out. So it's a very interesting market, and there's a lot of variables. So I don't see house prices dropping, Kathy. I don't see, really, if interest rates push up a lot further, if we push into the 8s, I think we might see another bit of a drop, kind of like what happened with my buyer that was buying today that backed out. So it's tough to see. We'll see if interest rates go up any higher. Ray, I see your comment. Kathy, you're seeing more buyers back out as well. Yeah, it's real. Like you get caught up in the heat of the moment, and then you get down to the interest rate and you're like, wait, oh man, that's, I was already at my maximum comfort level and we just pushed past it. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So Ray, good to see you, Ray. Ray says, what are the best programs available for first-time home buyers? That is a great question, Ray. Monday night, I am doing a webinar that's going to talk all about that. So same time, if you're not registered for it, shoot us an email. You can email me at kingteam@johnloneking.com, or put a comment into the YouTube and we'll get it back to you. But we'll register for you Monday night. We're going to talk about California Dream for All. We're going to talk about a lot of different programs that are available. So 7 p.m. this coming Monday, I'll be talking about different ways to do down payment assistance and all of the different programs. So I don't mean to ignore your question, Ray, but at the same time, I don't want to take up a lot of time on tonight's webinar because I got a lot I still want to cover, and I want to get you guys out of here no later than 8:30. All right. Linda says, hey, Kathy, it also depends on area and size. I agree. Real estate is location. Oh, and one more thing, location. And so it depends on where you're at. Real estate is definitely hyper local. And within that location, you've got, hey, are we at the higher end or the lower end of the market? So we're seeing a lot of variables in the market. All right, so let's get back to our regular scheduled programming. What do banks look for in a mortgage? 3 things we look for. We look for cash. Cash is how much money you have to pay for down payment, closing costs, and reserves. We'll talk about that in a minute. We talk about credit. So credit is how well you've paid your bills in the past, because it's the best indicator of how well you're going to pay them in the future. And then we care about income, because no matter how much your down payment is, no matter how good your credit is, if you don't have enough dollars coming in the door to make the payment, you will never successfully make the payment. And so income is critical to making sure that you can qualify. But there's one more thing we look at. I said there were 3 keys, but there's actually 4, and that is the property. So when we look at the property, I separate out the property from cash, credit, and income, because cash, credit, and income, they can balance each other out. If one of them is weak and the other 2 are strong, I can probably get you a loan. It might cost you a little more, but I can probably get you a loan. But if 2 of them are weak, maybe not. If 3 of them are weak, we're in big trouble. But the property has to meet the requirements no matter how good. So you could have great credit, great income, great down payment. You still have to meet all the requirements of the property. And that is the value of the property has to be here. So there has to be worth what you are paying for it. Otherwise, you have to cover the difference out of your pocket. The condition of the property, it has to have no health or safety issues, and it has to be livable. So it is critical. Kathy, I see your question. I'll get to that in a little bit, or your follow-up comment. It is critical that the property is livable with no health and safety hazards. People will say, no, John, I'm buying this house as is. No can do. We, as the bank, are putting a loan on there. We're not going to let you buy it in any condition just because you're happy with it. Because if you don't make the payment, we're taking it back. And we have a responsibility to the federal government who's backing the money to make sure of that fact. And the other thing that matters is the type of property. People misunderstand this a lot, because normally when you're talking about buying a home, we're mostly talking about single family residences. But if you switch to a manufactured home or a condominium, the rules change and the interest rates change. So be aware of the fact that the type of home matters. Doesn't mean we can't do that type of loan per se, or that type of home, but the rules are different depending upon the type of the home. So really, really important to understand that. So let's talk about cash, credit, and issues. So first of all, cash, as I said, it's the money for your down payment, your closing costs, and your reserves. So reserves is the extra money you have after you pay for down payment and closing costs. It's your rainy day fund. Let me tell you something about reserves. Reserves are really not that big of a deal in qualifying for mortgages other than jumbo loans. So jumbo loans are loans that are bigger than the normal federal government limits within the county you're buying. But I think reserves are the single most important factor to your success in owning a home. Because things happen, bad things happen when you own a home. And I don't mean that to scare you off, but guess what? Right now you're a renter, and if the toilet breaks, you call the landlord and the landlord pays to fix it. If the roof has a leak, you call the landlord and the landlord pays to fix it. When you're the homeowner, you pay to fix it. Now you're going to build wealth tenfold over time by being a homeowner instead of being a renter. But you got to make it through the short run. Because no matter how much money you're going to make over the years, if you can't get through this year and pay to put a roof over your head, then you're losing the home. So don't put yourself in that position if at all possible. And if you are spending all of your money that you had set aside for down payment and closing costs, and you have nothing left over, then your number one focus, every extra penny you get after buying a home, goes into that reserve account. Don't pay off any debt. Don't anything else. Your number one focus is to rebuild that reserve account. All right. So Kathy mentioned, and she said, she's referring to overall buyers backing out more than we saw a while ago. I agree. I'm seeing the same thing as well, Kathy. So it's definitely a shifting market. All right. So let's continue to talk about cash issues. So here's some things to be aware of when it comes to cash. First of all, seasoning. How long you've had the money in the bank matters. So don't just stick money in the bank. If you have money that you don't have in the bank, don't put it in there until after you talk to me, and we'll strategize on the best way to handle it. Do not just try and deposit the money to solve the problem. It does not solve the problem. The second thing, cash is a 4-letter word. And some of you are saying, well, duh, of course it is. No, I mean like profanity. It's a 4-letter word. I'm talking about green pieces of paper with pictures of presidents. That's very bad. Very, very, very bad, because I don't know where it came from. I had somebody the other day come to me and say, John, I sold a car back in November, and I've got the pink slip to show I owned the car. I've got the bill of sale to show who I sold it to and for how much I sold it to. And I got the Kelly Blue Book to show how much it's worth when I sold it. And so I'm good, right? Because I can prove this cash. The only problem is the cash has been sitting at my house for the last 9 months. And I said, here's the bad news. Whether the cash has been sitting there for 9 months or 9 minutes, it was cash. And I cannot prove the cash came from that person who signed the bill of sale. So if you're selling something, if you're getting a gift from grandma, anything, do not transact with green pieces of paper with pictures of presidents. Use Venmo, use a check, get a money order, something that I can track where it came from, because cash is never acceptable in the mortgage world. So be aware of that fact. All right, documentation. It's critical when we look at bank statements. You got to show me all the pages. I don't care how much money you spent in DoorDash, but I need to see it. I need to see, because I need to see if on the third page of your bank statement, right between those 2 DoorDashes, you've got a payment that goes out for $500 a month to a guy named Bob. And it happens on the same day every month, because we're going to get 2 months of bank statements. And if I see Bob on the same day of the month for the same dollar amount, I'm worried that you owe money to Bob and you're paying him a payment that's not on your credit report. We're required to see that. We're loaning you often close to $500,000. We want to know if you owe anybody any money that you didn't tell us about. And then timing of when the money is needed is important to understand, because you're going to need money when you start the loan process to pay for the appraisal and the credit report. You're going to need money in order to pay for, so I'll give myself some props. Linda says here, perfectly said. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. All right. So you're going to need money to pay for the appraisal. You're going to need money to pay for inspections, home inspections, roof inspections, all of those things. You have to have money to pay for that stuff. But then on top of that, you've got to write a check to the title company for earnest money. And then you've got to have enough money at the end to pay for the remainder of your down payment and closing costs. We're going to track every penny of that and where it came from and where it went. So just be aware of that fact and talk to me early and often if you have questions or concerns. Now let's talk about issues with credit. We talked a lot about credit already, so I'm going to gloss over this, but really it's how well you've paid your bills in the past determines your rate. There's lots of myths. We talked about a lot of things with credit earlier on in this webinar, but what I'll tell you is the one thing, well, we did kind of talk about paying people to fix your credit. There's nothing somebody can do to fix your credit that you can't do on your own. So if you're paying somebody to fix your credit because you think they have a magic bullet, they don't. Okay, if you want to give it a shot and have them try and help you, go for it, but just be careful, because a lot of them are very, very misleading in what they offer and what it's going to cost you. All right, issues with income. First of all, the thing about income is it's about a ratio of your income to your debt. So when you and I sit down, whether it's in person or on Zoom or on the phone, and I've already got all your paperwork and I've taken a look at your credit, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what are you willing to spend per month for a house payment? Once you tell me what you're willing to spend per month for a house payment, I'm going to calculate what I'll let you spend for a house payment. Those are the two very, very important numbers, because you're going to say, John, I'm willing to spend $3,000. And I'm going to look at your income and I'm going to look at what program you qualify for. And there's a number, it's a ratio of how much of your income, gross before taxes, will let you spend for your house payment, your credit cards, your car payments, everything. And so from that number, we're going to say, okay, you make $10,000 a month and I'll let you spend half of it. So I can let you spend $5,000 a month. But guess what? You have other bills. You've got to pay your $1,000 a month car payment. You've got to pay your $200 a month student loan payment and your $800 that you spend on all of your credit card minimum payments, because you got a lot of credit card debt. So that's $2,000 a month that you're paying on all those things. So the most I'm going to let you spend is $3,000 a month, because $5,000 is the most. And I had to subtract the $2,000 of bills. Now, good news, that matches. What I'll let you spend matches exactly what you are willing to spend. Ideal. Oftentimes they're not the same. If I'm willing to let you spend more, then you've got to think about, hey, where's the rest of my money going? And should I increase that in order to buy the home that suits my needs, even if it's beyond my comfort level? Okay, because in today's market, with these interest rates, everything is going to be beyond your comfort level. Now, if it's the other way, if you say, no, John, I'm okay paying more per month than what you're comfortable letting me spend, then there's other income coming into your household that I don't know about. So we need to discuss that. We need to look at ways to prove that income. Maybe put that other person on the loan. Maybe look at adding a cosigner. Lots of things for us to look at. But here's a couple of tips about income. It's a 2-year look forward, 2-year look backwards, and a 3-year look forward. So when we think about income, that doesn't mean you have to have had the same job or even a job for 2 years. But I'm just looking at the history of, well, what does your employment situation look like for the last 2 years? And if it's unstable, I might go back further and say, okay, well, what does that really mean to your future stability? If you have a fixed amount of income that you receive because you are paid a salary of $5,000 a month, 60 grand a year, I can predict that going into the future. I don't care what you made before. I don't care if you had a lower paying job before, because you have a salary now going forward. But if you have variable income, then I'm going to look backwards 2 years and say, well, how has that income been varying? And I'm going to use the average of the last 2 years to predict the future. Now, what's the 3 years looking forward mean? It means that things like alimony and child support, if you're not going to receive that for at least 3 years, I can't count the income. So if you have a child you're receiving child support on, and that child is 16 years old, then most divorce decrees say child support goes until the age of 18 or they graduate high school. But if they drop out of high school at 18, even if they're supposed to still be in high school, we can't argue to say, oh, well, yeah, they won't graduate high school till they're 19. Yeah, but if they drop out, then your ex doesn't have to pay it to you. And so we look at basically 15 years old as the cutoff. If you're receiving child support for somebody that's over 15, I typically can't count that child support income. So that's an example of 3 years forward. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is whether you are an employee or an employer. Are you working for someone else or do you work for yourself? What I'll tell you I find is that it's actually not as hard as you think it is to prove your income when you are an employee of somebody else. Even if you just changed jobs, even if your jobs have jumped all over, it's often easier than you think. Most people tell me, John, I don't think I'm going to qualify. And I find, yeah, you can. Your income's not a big deal. But here's the opposite. If you are self-employed and own your own business, it's often harder than you think it is. You will say to me, John, what do you mean I can't buy a $500,000 home? One of my employees who makes less than me just bought a $600,000 home. Yes, I've heard that before. The problem is your employee's income is stable. And if you don't employ them, somebody else will employ them and pay them the same amount of money because that's what they're worth. But you own the business. You can make a poor decision that lowers your profits and you won't give up and go work somewhere else because of pride for lots of business owners. So history says business owners are a greater challenge for us to calculate their income. And so when somebody says, John, I make really, really good money, I'm fine, and you own a business, I'm pretty concerned. Okay, I'm not telling you it's a problem. I'm saying I find more often it's more challenging than you think when you're a business owner and easier than you think when you're a W-2 employee. All right, so let's dive into some specifics about loans. I'm not going to, this one I got to make bigger because this one you are never going to be able to see well enough. 3 groups of loans: conventional, FHA, VA, and USDA, and jumbo. What I want you to understand is some basics of what we look at. So we've already covered cash, credit, and income. So conventional loans ideally want to see 10% down or more. Now you can put as little as 3% down, but ideally they work best with 10% down or more. Ideally a 740 or better credit score, although you could technically have as low as a 620. And they want to see less of your income spent towards your bills. The next category is government-backed loans, FHA, VA, and USDA. They're more forgiving. They'll allow for a smaller down payment. They'll allow for lower credit scores, and they'll allow for a higher debt-to-income ratio. The final category is jumbo loans. And what I'll tell you is jumbo is the wild, wild west. Jumbo loans are all different depending upon the bank we get the money from. The first two categories of conventional and then FHA, VA, and USDA, those rules are set by the federal government. But the last category of jumbo loans, those aren't set by the federal government. They're set from whoever the bank is that's offering the money. And so just be aware, you're going to see a wide varying range of options, and you're going to see a different level of requirements, typically way more strict than any of the other categories. All right. So now let's talk about money needed to close. How much money do you need to buy a home? So you have two categories. You have down payments and you have closing costs. So your down payment could be zero if you're doing a VA or a USDA loan. It could be 3% on a conventional loan or 3.5% on FHA, which is interesting because if I ask all the realtors here, most people think that FHA is the smallest down payment. It's not. Matter of fact, from all the programs, FHA requires the biggest down payment. It's just the most forgiving. Now, there's three places you can get your down payment money from. You can get it from your money, you can get it from a gift from family, or you can get it from a down payment assistance program. Your money, a gift from family, or a down payment assistance program. Now you have to deal with closing costs. What I'll tell you is closing costs average around 3% of the purchase price, but at least 10 to 15 grand. So if you're buying a $300,000 home, you're not looking at 9 grand. You're looking at, $10,000, $12,000. Closing costs come in lots of forms. I've got a masterclass I did about 6 months ago. You can look on my YouTube library, and I spent 30 minutes talking about all the different closing costs and where they come from. Just recognize that if you're saying, hey, John, I've got 10% for a down payment. I'm buying a $500,000 home and I have 50 grand. You don't have 10% for a down payment because that $500,000 home, you're looking at probably $15,000 to $18,000 in closing costs. So your 50 grand just became 32 to 35,000, which means, hey, I've got 5 to 7% down, but you don't have 10. So just be aware of that when you're looking at buying a home. Even if you're doing a zero down payment loan, you still have to come up with closing costs. So closing costs can be paid for by the same three categories: your money, a gift from family, or a down payment assistance program. But you can also get closing costs from a seller credit or from a lender credit. So just be aware of how those options work, because seller credits and lender credits only pay for closing costs. They cannot help pay for down payment. Remember, if you have any questions about this or anything else, feel free to post a question. If you're watching live, the question will come up and I'll be able to put it on the screen. If you're watching recorded, post the question and I'll address it later. So we've got probably another 10 or 15 minutes of information, and we're really going to tie this down for you. So here's the deal. This is a tough time to buy a home. We've got inflation. We've got the economy in flux. We've got war. Here's the sad truth. This has been the same for quite some time. For the last 10 years, we've had a variation of all of these different factors. It's been hard to buy a home for a long time, but all good things in life are hard. Nothing worth doing is easy, and home ownership is the same thing. So just be aware of the fact that when you go through the process of buying a home, it's going to be like flying in an airplane. And if you've flown in an airplane before, you're going to know that turbulence happens. Matter of fact, I read an article saying that clear air turbulence is a bigger issue now than it ever has been, and it's going to get worse. But it's not a sign of a bad pilot. The pilot's job is to try and avoid the turbulence while getting you safely to your destination and on time. And sometimes they cannot fly around the turbulence because it would cause them to either run out of gas, well, that is a safety issue, or be super late and you won't be happy with that. And so sometimes they have to fly right through the turbulence. You will experience turbulence through the home buying process. Even while you're in escrow and you say, I'm done, John, I got pre-approved. You reviewed everything and I'm in great shape. Yeah, I do my job. I make sure that you're in great shape, but there are things I cannot predict. There are things that are going to come up, and just know I'm right here by your side. I am captain of that plane. I'm holding on to the whatever it's called, the yoke, the stick, the steering wheel, darn it. I'm holding on to the steering wheel of the airplane, and I am guiding you to a successful landing. So that's really my role, and your realtor is going to do the same thing. Let's talk about the process of buying a home. So here's what you're looking at. Step one is getting pre-qualified or pre-approved. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. So step one, getting pre-qualified or pre-approved. That really is the first step of the process, is making sure you can buy and what it's going to cost you to buy. Once you get pre-approved, we're going to require to take a look at your credits. We can usually do it with a soft credit. We're going to take a look at your income. We're going to take a look at your bank statements. We're going to review everything. And then once you get into contract, we're going to review it all again. So be aware, it's going to feel like pulling teeth. We're going to ask you for the same thing twice. That's part of the process. Okay, the second step is finding your home. That's the fun part. So when you go out shopping for your home, that's where you're selecting a realtor. And be clear, you pay for your realtor, even though you don't pay for your realtor. It does not cost you a penny to pay for the realtor. The seller pays for the realtor. Okay. So you as the buyer have to pick a realtor that you trust, because it does not serve you well to have multiple realtors trying to help you at the same time. As a matter of fact, it's a disservice, because you're going to tell one person you loved this house, except you hated the small kitchen. You're going to tell another one you loved this house, but you hated the small backyard. Well, the truth is they didn't get all of the information, and they're going to show you the wrong homes over and over again. So pick one realtor. They all have access to the same information, and find somebody that you trust. And if something happens and you feel like they're not serving you well, be a grown-up and tell them. Ask them what you can do to better work together, or let them know you're going to move on to somebody else. Okay. This is a business relationship, and make sure that you're treating it like that. Okay. Really, really important that you have a good relationship with your realtor. All right. As you're shopping for a home, once you find a home and you get an offer accepted, that is the soonest moment you have to lock in an interest rate. You are not locking interest rates in early. So it's just like if you're saying, hey, I'm going to take a cross-country road trip and I'm going to drive from here to all the way around the United States for 2 weeks, and you're trying to budget how much money it's going to cost you. You can budget, but you can't be sure how much the gas is really going to be until you pull into the station. And the same thing is true, except this is gas you're buying for the next 30 years. But guess what? You're not keeping the loan for 30 years. Interest rates go up, interest rates go down. You're going to refinance the home at some point in the future. We just don't know when. But you can't play the market. You can't wait to buy a house until the day that interest rates fall. And the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, but factual, if the day you go to buy the house, interest rates are at 28-year highs like they are literally today, then you don't have to complete the purchase contract. You have the right to back out like my client did today. Now, that's unfortunate for them. It's their right decision for where they're sitting. I'm not encouraging you to go shop for a home and back out. I'm encouraging you to be aware of what the costs are and what your payment is going to be before you go shopping. But if things just bump up too high too quickly, you have the ability to back out. All right. Step 3, once you've got your contract accepted, you are in processing and underwriting. They are the ones that give you the final approval, and they have the authority to actually say you are final approved. Once they're done verifying everything again with a fine-tooth comb, that's when you sign your loan documents with the notary. And at that point is when you bring in the remainder of your funds, and then you get your keys and you celebrate and you get to move in. So that's the process. All right. Let's dive in. We're in the home stretch here. We got probably another 5 minutes or so. So I want to talk about the financial benefits of owning a home. I think it's critical to understand what the real benefits are of home ownership. So I'm going to give you the 3 things that give you benefits to owning a home. And that is a tax write-off, forced savings, and appreciation. Now, I'll make that bigger and you can go through the math with me in a minute, but I wanted to first have you look me in the eye and hear me tell you. There are 3, not 1, 3 ways you build wealth through home ownership. Everybody says, oh my gosh, it's appreciation. It's about interest rate, house prices going up. And I'll see that when I sell my house down the road. But John, what if house prices don't go up? Well, guess what? Historically, house prices in California have always gone up 5% per year. Now there's years when it goes up 30%, and there's years when it drops 5%. But on the average in California, you're seeing a 5% increase per year. Okay. That is the thing people think about the most, but that's a lot to do with timing. Like, when did I buy the house and where was the market? When did I buy the house and where was the market? So there's a lot of variables in there, but there's 2 other critical things people forget about. First one is your tax write-off. If you make good earnings, no matter what, everybody gets a standard deduction. That's only a certain dollar amount. For a lot of people, you can save a lot more on your taxes by having a itemized deductions, and your interest and your property taxes are deductible. Okay. And Kathy already jumped ahead. So Kathy's answer is, and your mortgage gets paid down too. Kathy, that is the third category, which is forced savings. Every single month, a portion of your payment pays down your balance, even if the value of your home never went up, ever, for the next 30 years. You still owe nothing at the end of 30 years because every single month part of your payment paid down your balance. That is taking money out of one pocket and putting it in the other. You are saving money. So part of your mortgage payment is money that belongs to you in the future. That is critical to understand. And so let's go quickly through the math. This is a $350,000 home example. And this person buying this $350,000 home, they're putting 10% down plus closing costs. So the tax write-off, it is estimated to be around $590 a month in tax savings. Now, again, you got to consult your tax advisor. There's lots of variables to this, but you're able to write off your interest, your property taxes, and possibly your mortgage insurance. Okay, so that is critical to helping you save money and save it now, because you can either get that money as a bigger tax refund next year, or you can change your withholdings and get more money out of every single paycheck in the meantime. So you have the choices. You have the options on when you want to see that money. All right, your next option, or your next way is forced savings. So of your monthly payment, so that monthly payment here is somewhere. I'm looking at the screen here. I thought it was somewhere on here. I don't know. Maybe the monthly payment's not on there. Anyway, of your monthly payment, $300 a month of that monthly payment is principal pay down. So you're saving $300 a month, and then you get the appreciation, and I'm just calculating it at 2%, and that's $583 a month. So you're getting $1,473 of wealth building every single month as a homeowner. Okay, Kathy, I'll cover your questions in a minute. Actually, I'll cover that right now. So let's do this. And Kathy had a comment, and she said, how are people viewing some upgrades and additions to the home being tax benefits too, like solar? You know, I have a bit of a, I have a negative feeling about solar. You do get some tax benefits, but solar costs a lot of money to buy it. It deteriorates over time and doesn't provide you the same amount of energy in the future. And more importantly, it creates issues when you sell your house because the seller, the buyer, has to assume responsibility for that payment. So yes, you can do that. And yes, you get some tax benefits from it. But sometimes you have to then write a check when you go to sell the house to pay it off, and poof, there went your tax benefits because the owner gets a solar system for free. You saved a few grand in taxes, but you had to write a check to pay off that solar system. So I am not a huge proponent of solar from a financial perspective. If you want to save the environment and you want to do your part, I completely understand it. But from a savings money perspective, I don't see that as being really I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. That's the simplest way for me to say it. All right, so we're done with the financial benefits. A couple of things as we wrap up here. We are just about done. The first thing, if you do not already have my mobile app, you need to get it. This is the best way for you to start the loan application process. Once you install my mobile app, do it now. So scan the QR code that's on the screen and you can download my mobile app. What you will get in my mobile app is the ability to run a payment calculator. And so you click here and you can run numbers to say, hey, this is how much the monthly payment is going to be. And you can make adjustments to all of these figures. So it is a really handy app to help you with, not just in being able to do the application process and upload paperwork, but you can run calculations of your monthly payment using my mobile app. So I definitely encourage you to download it if you don't have it already. All right. Makeup Diva has a great question. I'm going to cover that in just a second. All right. So last two slides, and then I'll answer any questions. So if you have more questions, post them now. I've got to get done here before 8:30, but we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. So 5 reasons why it matters who you choose to take care of you on your mortgage. By the way, if you haven't figured it out yet, this entire 90 minutes that I'm spending, it's a job interview. I am interviewing for the job to be your trusted mortgage advisor. Now, that might mean I talk you out of doing a loan. So don't misunderstand. I'm not interviewing for the job of convincing you to buy a home or to do a loan. I'm interviewing for the job of being the guy you trust for the rest of your life with every mortgage related decision. And I even want to be the guy you call about anything financial related that you need advice. I can connect you with the right person. So having the right person doing your mortgage matters for 5 reasons. Their reputation is huge. My reputation in the marketplace, I've spent 22 years cultivating a great reputation. That makes a difference when you're competing with someone else in an offer. Now, I just told you 5 out of 5 buyers got their offers rejected, so maybe it doesn't make that big of a difference. But we're in a highly competitive market. It does matter. Pre-offer, what do I do to call the seller and help sell the benefits of you as the buyer and me as the lender before they review the offer with the seller? That's very, very critical. We can fully underwrite your loan so that you have full loan approval, which will help you to look better in the eyes of the seller. We can remove contingencies quickly. I did a masterclass a few months back, and I talked about timelines and contingencies and what all those mean. So if you don't know what that is, check out that video from a few months ago. And we have the ability to close quickly. For some sellers, that's really, really important. All right, my last slide, and then I'll jump into questions. So if you have questions, post them now. So next steps. Here's the deal. You have 2 things that you can do. You can download my mobile app, and that's the QR code on the top. And then if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would be very grateful. So if you're not already watching me on YouTube, the QR code at the bottom is my YouTube channel, or just search at John Loan King on YouTube and you will find my YouTube channel. So as I wrap up, I'm going to bring up Makeup Diva's question. And then it doesn't look like I have any other questions, but if I do, feel free, if you have a question, post it while I'm answering this question, and I'd be happy to answer it. So Makeup Diva, what are my thoughts on new home builders and their offers of lower rates than what is currently being loaned by outside banks? Whew, you know what? You just hit the nail on the head of what my video is going to be about tomorrow. Now, I'd love to give you credit and say, my God, you gave me a great idea, and maybe I should, but I had already planned on that being my video for this week. So I'll give you a kind of a sneak preview. Builders are charging you more for homes than you need to spend. And there's a big reason for that, because they have to maintain their sales price, because otherwise everybody else who's in contract for those homes at that high price, they're going to want that same discount. And so the builder doesn't have a choice. I saw an article today that Lennar in Colorado is offering a 4.25% interest rate. So I called one of the guys in my corporate office who handles the money side of things. And I said, what is that costing them? And he ran the math and he came back and he said, John, it's costing them 15 points. Now, if you don't understand what a point is 1% of the loan amount. So if they're doing a $600,000 home, the builder is getting $600,000 from you to buy this home. To give you a 4.25% interest rate, they've got to pay the bank 15% of that $600,000, or $90,000. The builder is literally making $510,000 instead of $600,000, but you're paying $600,000 for it. So great, you get a lower priced interest rate and a lower monthly payment. I don't know about you. I'd rather save the $90,000 on the price of the home, and then I'd rather pay the higher rate right now and refinance it later. So what are my thoughts on it? I think the builders are backed by deep pockets, and they're backed by Wall Street, and they need to drive top line sales for Wall Street and maintain their sales price for their communities. Now, I'm going to go a lot deeper into this tomorrow. So if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. If you are, by tomorrow afternoon, you'll see the video posted. It's my weekly market update. I talk about what's happening. I'll talk about the Fed a little bit and what's happening with interest rates, some of the things I discussed tonight, but I'm going to go a lot deeper into what's going on with these builders and what does it really mean and what does it mean to you as a potential buyer. So Makeup Diva, I appreciate that. That was a fantastic question, and it leads right into me asking everybody to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I really want to stay connected with you and I want to help you with your financial future. So if you have any questions about anything, feel free to post it here real quick, but I'm just about out of time and it doesn't look like I have any other questions. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for allowing me to take 90 minutes of your time this wonderful Thursday night. Don't tell me if the Niners won or lost, because I haven't had a chance to watch the game. Hopefully they won. Anyway, hope everybody has a fantastic evening. Enjoy your weekend, and please give me a call so that I can help you answer your financial and mortgage questions. We'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.